back to Love in Dark Places. On this episode, we are going to talk about what I don't want to talk about. But it's really a huge, almost the whole reason why I wanted to do this podcast in the first place. And I didn't include it a lot in the introduction. But thank you so much. This is why I have this mic, because my videographer Hannah wants some more ASMR experience for you. So if you hear saliva, that's her fault. Um, but yeah, but yes. So and scene. So yes. I'll just cut right to it since I've beat around the bush enough. So this episode I'm going to be talking about my mom, Tomoko Mabin, her life, death, and resurrection, if you will. She passed last year, 2023, on July 24th. Ever since, as you can expect, my life has been completely different, and I am a different Nobi than I have been in the past. And I think that can be expected, but I also think that's a good thing in a lot of ways. But before I really get into it, I want to thank, first and foremost, my family, my brothers, my sisters, my dad, all of them for just really giving me permission to share this and to invite me to go into this space publicly with you all. This story is a part of their story too, and so I don't claim to speak on behalf of any of them or any of the other members in my family. Although there are intersections, this is really my story and my relationship with my mom, and just how much I've learned from her life, death, and what I have full faith in her resurrection. And so, yeah, I also have asked my videographer, Hannah, to, if I get lost in the sauce or if the emotions start to overwhelm me, that she would help to just prompt me with some questions to help me stay on track and to be engaged with you on this camera. But I am going to be asking for a bit more grace. Thank you so much for enduring all of my tangents, outbursts, and incomplete sentences. I thank you. There may be more of that. There may be more tears. Jesus, I don't have tissues. Amen. It's fine. It's fine. It's raw, right? I'm coming here authentic, tears running, if you will. So I just asked for just a little bit more grace in this space, as it might take me a little bit to really get out my thoughts. And I think this is the first time, to be honest, where I've spoken about my mom at length and in such a dedicated space like this since she's passed. But yeah, so my mom, Tomoko, I did not call her mom as much as I called her Okasan, because she is Japanese and she grew up in Tokyo, Japan, and that's where all my family on her side of the family tree is. We, during my life with her, we had a really interesting relationship. I mean, honestly, I can say my mom was everything to me. She was my caretaker, a person I looked up to, my friend, my greatest cheerleader. She was my biggest enemy as well in my teen years. And, I will forever be grateful for the relationship that we had and that we do have, because I've just learned so much from her and her legacy. And growing up, I just was kind of in awe of my mom. She just seemed to be so capable. She could do anything. If there was a leaked faucet in the house or a spider crawling around or whatever, my no offense, Dad, but my mom would squish it. My mom would handle the leaked faucet. She would cook us Japanese dinners and sometimes these experimental dinners that I did not enjoy. I did tell her to stick to the Japanese food because that's her specialty. But I appreciate my mom's pictures here, so I might look at it from time to time. I appreciate the try. I appreciate the try. She could speak two different languages. She could speak Japanese and English. She connected with anyone and everyone from whatever background they were coming from. She could make anyone feel like they were welcomed or that, that she was excited to see them. She could bring just this warm and beautiful energy. And she was, for lack of a better word, she was diehard about. There's gonna be another word I could choose. There's another word I could choose, but she was very passionate. She was very passionate about other people experiencing the greatest happiness. And she lived to make other people happy. She lived to make her children and her household happy. But there were also times where, I looked up to my mom so much as a kid, and in some instances, I wanted to be just like her. But as a child, you can, at least I as a child, can experience rejection really easily. And I think I started to feel, especially coming into like preteen, teen years, I started to feel like my mom was not a fan of me, that I was a nuisance, or she preferred my older brother and my little sister over me. And I started to feel like, maybe I was a child she didn't want, or I was the child that didn't have to be there. And I even felt, as I was getting ahead in my classes, and I was really obviously taking on the English language because I don't speak Japanese fluently. But, I really took to reading and writing, and so my vocabulary started to really excel and advance. And I started to feel like, what if my mom is kind of intimidated or made insecure about the way that I speak English in comparison to her? Like, I just felt like as a preteen / teen, there were all these reasons that started to come up that made me feel like, man, I don't think my mom loves me like she loves my brother and sister. And so I grew to come really attached to my dad, and I became a daddy's girl very quickly. And so, I struggled with that because it felt like in those years where, I was coming more and more into my womanhood. I was becoming more and more into, the puberty and the changes that you experience as a woman. I felt distant from my mom, and that I couldn't really go to her for those things. And in fact, I was more so taking cues from my dad about how to be strong and how to take leadership and how to be successful in life. And I I remember kind of going through my high school years just kind of resenting her for it and for a while, and just feeling like, you know, I, I couldn't really go to her, that she wasn't a safe space. Then I graduated from college. I graduated from high school. We're not there yet. I graduated from high school and I went to college, and I ended up in my first long-term relationship with my boyfriend at the time. And that was the first time that I was really exposed to what does it look like to be in a relationship with someone you really love and want to make happy, but you're not sure how to. And how does that affect you as a person? And as I started to really wrestle with those ideas, I started thinking about my mom, not just as my mom, but as a woman and as a person. Because as a child, I could only see her as mom. I could only see her on this pedestal of, she's supposed to take care of me. She's supposed to have these great ideas and opinions of me. She's supposed to love me and always be happy for me and always give me what I want, right? Like I pigeonholed her into this role. That wasn't all of who she was. And that didn't affect all of the parts of her, that there were these other pieces. And so when I got into this first long-term relationship with my then boyfriend, and I started to see how I was changing, how much I became closed off and not able to express emotions that I wanted to express to my then boyfriend, about how much hurt I felt when my then boyfriend didn't receive that I actually was trying to help or trying to love or trying to be supportive, and they thought the opposite. That feeling of not doing enough or never being enough really became prevalent in my relationship with my then boyfriend. Now, I'm not saying this to shame or to condemn my then boyfriend. This is a completely different episode, but just to say that we were both young. We started dating each other at 18, both came from, fairly dysfunctional backgrounds and upbringings, and we wanted to give each other the love that we never had and we never experienced. But how do you do that if you've never experienced it? Because at that point, you're just going after ideas. And there were no references. And so I say all that because I have nothing but the best of feelings and wishes for my then boyfriend. I think he was an incredible human being. But I bring up these points to share how when I was wrestling with these questions, when I was wrestling with these emotions and these conflicts, it just brought me back to my mom, not just as a mother, but as a wife and as a woman and as a human being. And I started to separate. I started to separate from what I felt was a rejection towards me from what was actually something she was just struggling with and that she was having difficulty navigating. And from then on, our relationship dynamics started to change as I went further and further on into my adulthood. We started to talk more. We started to vent to each other more, Our friendship began to rebuild. And so by the time I was graduating from graduate school with my master's degree, like she was the person I wanted to, sorry. I know. It's always hard when you get to those points. She was the person I wanted to talk to, and I wanted to share my news, and I wanted to share moments of happiness and joy with, and I began to accept the ways she could love me and not demand or hold against her the ways that she couldn't. And to really see her for who she is and not who I thought she was. And so, my mom is a really great, still to this day, she's a really great gift giver. And she really loves to give of herself, to give of her time, to give of her heart. And so, she gave me her Just Fab subscription. She did, and she paid for my monthly shoe subscription, which was really helpful for me. You never know where I'm gonna go with this. But she did, and it just, I love fashion. I love to feel beautiful, and I love not to pay for things. I do. I'm not sponsored by Just Fab. This wasn't a way to just like weasel in the brand of Just Fab. Cut to the commercial of me crying. But yeah, I really love that. If there was something I saw on Amazon and I was like, man, Mom, like, I really want this. She would get it. And, for some, maybe that sounds minuscule. Maybe that sounds greedy. I don't know. But for me, I recognize that because most of our relationship at that part of my life is long distance, right? Like I moved from Alaska to Pennsylvania to go to undergrad. So at that point, when I was starting my relationship with my then boyfriend, I was 400, 300 miles away, you know? And then after shortly going from undergrad, I went to DC, which again is still 300, 400 miles away. And then after completing, my master's degree, I'm off to my first tour as a U.S. diplomat going to Vietnam, which is it further away? It probably is the same. Honestly, it probably is around 400 to 500 miles, but that's just to say, there wasn't a lot else that she could do in person. So every time, she would just interject in the conversation. Oh, you need that? Well, let me look this up for you. And then she's like, okay, I've already gotten it for you. It's coming. And I could just tell that was her way of still, good gracious, this is hard. Yeah. That was her way of still, showing that she wanted to be there, that she still wanted to be mom, that she still wanted to protect and to provide as much as she could from where she was at, that she really wanted me to know that that I'm loved by her and that I'm cherished by her. And so for me, I just felt really encouraged. And so, oh gosh, fast forward to me leaving the diplomatic corps and coming into ministry for the first time. That was when I really started my therapy journey. And when I came to the realization that, while I knew that the relationship dynamic between my mom and I had changed, I didn't know if I had communicated that to her. And this was in 2021. And a part of my goals with my therapist at that time, because I was realizing the relationships that I've had with my parents and the thoughts that I've carried about each of them individually, the wounds that I've carried from the rejections that I received and felt, were something that was affecting my relationship with myself, was something that was affecting my dating relationship with my now husband, Charles. and was something that was affecting my ability to be in relationship with the amazing and awesome sisters who were opening their lives to me and coming to me for advice and spiritual counseling. And so I was like, man, I really want to focus on this in my time with her. So one of the relationships we looked at, obviously, was my relationship with my mom. And, you know, I I needed to make the decision to outright forgive her for all of the ways that I wanted her to love me but couldn't, and for all of the ways I needed her to show me that she loved me but she couldn't. I didn't want to hold that against her anymore, especially after going through this journey in the past like 5, 6 years at that point, of recognizing that she's a human being, and she's imperfect. And as much as she wants to be this great, amazing superstar, superhuman of a mom, she can't. And I don't want people to hold me to that standard because I can't live up to that standard either. I don't have kids yet. But even like with just being a mentor to others, I didn't want them to look at me as someone who can never make any mistakes, who always has to get it right, who always knows how to say the right things, who always knows how to be there. I just can't. I'm human. And so if I expected that grace from others, I was like, man, I really need to fully commit to giving that grace back to my mom. And so I asked my therapist at the time if she could help me walk through modeling out a conversation of reconciliation with my mother. And, one of the things she shared with me was, don't expect a Hallmark moment. She said, don't expect like hugs and tears and like fireworks and then end credits. And then, there's a bonus scene at the end of the movie where you guys are just walking off into the sunset with you pregnant with your future husband's baby. I mean, it really can go there, And I think that was honestly the greatest advice because it helped me orient myself to say, okay, I'm not doing this because I want this response or reaction from her. I'm not doing this because I'm expecting for her to respond in this way. I'm doing this because this is something I want to freely give to her. Yeah. And she has the right to respond to it in whatever way she feels is right to her in that moment. It's not going to take away me wanting to share this with her. And so cut to December 2021, my now husband, we go visit my family in Colorado. And I asked my mom, I finally work up the courage. It was very scary. I finally work up this courage to share with her that, hey, I just want to go out for lunch, just me and you, because usually like my sister's around or my niece and nephews are around, and we really don't have a lot of one-on-one time outside of like our FaceTime calls and things. And she was like, oh, okay. And so we make it happen. Her first child, Akito, which is her favorite dog. That's why it's just the love she has for this dog. They're in heaven together. But he was in the car with us as well. And it's not a tangent. I promise you it's going to make sense when I bring it back. But he was in the car with us to go to lunch because she doesn't want to leave his side because his health was starting to get really shaky at that point, and he passed in 2022. So we went to lunch, and I began to share with my mom that I really wanted to apologize to her for the way that I had treated her, for the way that I had spoken to her and spoken of her, and that I didn't give her the respect and I didn't recognize how much she loved me, and that there was so much. I used to always say, like, I learned this from my dad, and like, I'm like this because of my dad, and my dad has taught me to be this, but I never gave space to my mom, really, to say how much she has taught me. And especially as I entered into my diplomatic career, I realized that was almost all her. How do you work in cross-cultural environments? How do you communicate with someone who doesn't have the same language as you? How do you present a warm and loving heart from in an environment where people have no idea what your culture and your background looks like? All of that I learned from her. And so, and just how do you be a woman in those spaces and not allow other people to discredit the contribution you bring into a primarily male space? It's all of her. And I tried to share that with her. I did. I tried to share that with her. But every single time she kept interrupting me, and she was like, "No, I don't remember that." And, "No, don't worry about it." And like, "My parents were really hard on me. There was some abuse there." I said, "Whoa, let's just circle back. Let's just, and I'm trying and I'm trying. And that rejection started to come up again, where I was like, wow, she doesn't really want to listen to me. She doesn't really want to take in what I'm saying. She's not giving me space. And then I paused. I thought about the healing, the codependency group work that I was doing, and all of such. And I said, what if she can't and is not at the space yet to handle big emotions? What if this is a lot for her to process? And she's not often in these spaces, and this is the best way for her to receive it, or the only possible way in this moment for her to receive it. And by me enforcing, again, that she has to respond this way, she has to receive it this way, it's me forcing her to be someone that she just isn't in that moment. And I have all rights and privileges to hate her for that. But I was tired of it. And again, I kept thinking about how many ways she's shown me that she does love me, and that is what is true. My mom does not hate me. My mom does not wish that I was never born. That's nothing. She's never communicated that to me. I did. I said some horrible things to her. There was one night my parents had an argument, and I was put in to mediate said argument. And I said to my mom at the time, because I love using this camera as a confession hour. I said to my mom at the time, if you were to die and I was at your funeral, I would have nothing to say about you if they asked me to speak. I think I was 9 when I said that, maybe. I think we were living in Turkey at the time. Yeah, that's really hard. That's really hard. And I was living with that guilt as I was sitting in that conversation, and I wanted her to appease me of that guilt. But I realized I also need to forgive myself for not knowing what I didn't know as a child, for being angry more than grateful for the times in which we had together growing up, because I just didn't understand. And so, here I am trying to communicate all this, and she just not letting it roll. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna let this space be what she needs it to be. My goal here is to communicate that I am no longer that teen, that preteen, that child who hates her, that thinks that she doesn't love me, that is ashamed of her, or whatever, all of these negative lies that I was told about her from these voices in my head, right? Those ugly fear demons. I was like, all right, so she can't accept the please forgive me and I'm sorry. So I kept reiterating to her that, I just want to let you know that I am so proud to have you as my mom. I am so grateful that you are my mom. And I'm so thankful for everything you've done for me, not done to me, that's weird. Everything you've done for me. I'm grateful for all of the things I've learned from you. And I started to point out what that was. And then, maybe I get my tangents from her. She went off in a tangent to talk about all of the ways that my Obachan, my grandmother, wanted to be a diplomat for Japan and all of these things. And we ended the conversation. There were no hugs. There were no fireworks. But let me tell you what did happen. Towards the end, my mom, they came to come get the check, and she had like a panic moment where she was like, "Oh my gosh, Akito!" And I was like, "Oh, that's right, he exists." And she's like, and she runs. And when I tell you the love, maybe obsession, the love that my mom has for this dog, she doesn't forget about Akito. He was struggling with his health. And so he was always on her mind, and how he's doing and how he's feeling and all of these things. And so the fact that we went, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it was, long time, of her just not thinking about the dog, I felt pretty loved. In fact, this is going to be bad. I'm so sorry, Akito. This is going to be bad. But when she checked on him, she was like, "Let me just check out." I was like, "Yeah, go ahead. Go for it. Of course." So she goes to check on him. She comes back into the Vietnamese pho restaurant we were eating out. Shout out to pho, because it's for real good. Moving on. She comes back into the restaurant, and she's like, I was like, "Oh, is everything okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I mean, he did pee on himself." And I was like, "Oh, snap." She's like, "I know this is a rental. Is this going to be all right?" Again, the dog did pee in our rental car that we got. But it's fine. We cleaned it and everything. It's fine. We gave it back to everybody. Probably cleaner than they received it because we cleaned it so much. But that to me was like a huge sign of like, wow, my mom, she may not have been able to receive it. She may have not been able to hold space for it fully, or at least in the way that I felt like I needed her to hold space or wanted her to. But she was present. She was present with me. And I was like, "Success, Jesus. Success. We'll take it. We'll take the car being peed on by the dog. We'll take it." When I tell you this is love in dark places, this is what I mean. So, yeah. And then, this is the last story that I'll share before her passing. But, after that, our relationship became like a Hallmark movie. Like, we were just like two best girlfriends. She started to open her life up to me. She started to share things about her dating in the past, fears that she had about herself. She started sharing personal things that I'd never really heard of. Like, I'm scared because I feel like I don't know what happened to the fighter that I was before. I was such a fighter when I was younger. She came to visit me in Jersey after me and my husband got married in 2022, and we just went out to New York City, to Philly. We took her to her favorite Eagles game. She loves the Eagles. It's probably after the kids. It's after the kids. The Eagles are after the kids. It's Akito, the kids, Eagles, probably. And like, she was just a kid in a candy store. The Eagle Stadium was like Disneyland for her. She was so happy. And we went to New York, and I made sure to take her to all the places like that was in the National Treasure movie, because she loved the National Treasure. We went on a ferry ride from Staten Island so that she could see the skyline, on the New York skyline on the water. And afterwards, she was like, "This was such a great day for me, because I always wanted a day like this since I was young, and I finally got to see it." And I felt like God really gave us just kisses from heaven to have such a wonderful day together. It was literally something out of the movies. And I feel so grateful to have that memory, because, a little more than a year later, I get a call. And what's interesting, it was on the day of my Sabbath. I don't know where I'm at in time. I'm doing the best I can with what I got. 35. Okay, well, that's not bad. That's not terrible. I could do... Moving on. right on the day of my Sabbath, which is every Monday, where I just chill. I don't do any work. I really just kind of unplug from electronics and just really focus on resting and refreshing refreshing and resetting ahead of the week. And I was studying out self-love because I had gotten a text message, I think, from a sister previously that was sharing how she didn't really see any scriptures referencing self-love in the Bible, and if self-love was a biblical concept. And so I was spending that morning really diving into the topic and looking at the scriptures and looking at the difference between being selfish or being arrogant and loving yourself as God loves you. And I wrote this out. I said, self-love is not self-conceit. Self-love is not self-deceit. Self-love is confidence in the truth that we are loved by God and we are who He says we are. And it lives out in the way we treat or take care of our minds, our hearts, spirit, and bodies. And it bears fruit in the way we treat and take care of others. And not a moment later, after I finished writing out that section, my sister is blowing up my phone, and she knows it's my Sabbath. The whole family does. And she's like, "Nobi, I know it's your Sabbath. You need to call me, like, immediately." And I'm like, "Okay, God, as usual, I ain't eat nothing yet. I ain't have a morsel. I ain't have a bread. I have nothing. So please, God, be my sustenance, because I don't know what I'm about to hear on my phone." I thought she was going to tell me about, a recent breakup with some other, and she was going to get into it. But I pick up the phone, and my sister just gets right to it. She's like, "Hey, are you sitting?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "Hey, I need you to sit down somewhere that's safe and let me know." And I was like, "Okay, I'm sitting." And she said, "Mom committed suicide." And my world just kind of paused. And my spirit kind of left my body. And, but at the same time, I just felt this weird peace of knowing that somehow, some way, for some reason, everything is going to be okay. And I proceeded to comfort my sister who called me. And I began to ask her to take some deep breaths, and I began to ask her who's her support system right now in Colorado, what's her plan, that she was going to go and see my brother and just be there with the family. And, I hung up the phone. My husband rushes in like an emotional brown bear, just a hurricane of emotions, because my sister couldn't get a hold of me, so she called my husband. And she called my husband, and so he was probably going 90 on the highway to get here to let me know. And so he was fully expecting that I didn't know yet when he came in. And he saw me, and then, if you know Charles, he just crumbled into a ball of tears. And then I proceeded to comfort him. It was a weird moment. It was a weird day. And it was a weird new life, a new normal, where not only does my beautiful mom not exist in this life that I'm living in, but she doesn't exist because of depression, because of suicide. And there was no note. You had to do this. She just put her jewelry, I was told, in different piles and labeled them. And then she, put all her trash together and made it all nice so you could just easily take it out. Just mom. Super mom. So weird. But there was no note. There was just, this really pissed me off. There was just I think the night of, she had put in on Instagram, she posted all these stories of like pictures of us, and it looked like she was reminiscing, and she was like, oh, Nobi would always be reading when we would fly, Nia would always be eating, and Najee would be nowhere to be found. I don't know what she said about him, but that's the truth. And and I messaged her and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. And the next morning I get the call. And so I was like, you could say bye to Instagram, but you couldn't say bye to us? Like, pissed. I was upset. My beautiful friend Brooke was like, it's good to know that, you were the last thought that she had. No, it's not. She could have sent a text, I love you, or something. She did tell me that the Amazon package I ordered for Charles did come for his birthday on time, and I appreciated that. I think I said thank you. But you can never prepare for these things. These things will always be a surprise. I don't think life is meant for us to be prepared for these things. But yeah, since she's passed, I have been a different Nobi. And I've been changed for some time. And I think I realized in her suicide that, man, my mom fought really hard. She fought really hard. And I've come to understand depression as a cancer. It's serious. It's insidious. And the worst part is that it can hide in secret and take the victim themselves by surprise. And, she struggled and we didn't know it. Oh, there was no signs. There was nothing to tell us that, other than, we knew that our Bachan, her mom, had passed 2 to 3 months before that. But even still, there were no signs. She kept that close to her and hidden. And a part of me thinks that that's because she felt like her emotions, her struggles are her responsibility, and she didn't want to put that on her children. And I understand that to a certain degree. But, I wanted to get on here and share this because I have not shared this publicly. I've only shared this with a certain group of friends and people that are close to me here in the church. I wanted to share this because I am not ashamed of my mother's suicide. I am not ashamed of her fight. I am not ashamed of her life. I'm not ashamed of her death. I am still very much so incredibly inspired by my mom, who she was and who she is and who she will always be. She is still to this day one of the strongest women I have ever known. And I am grateful that as a Christian, I have the hope that she now lives again, more whole, more free, more exactly of who she is meant to be and was always meant to be. And that she can hold space for the big and small emotions, that she is still loving us just as much, if not more, than when she loved us while she was here. Every time I went out after those 2 or 3 weeks after she passed, there was I took a risk. Maybe 5 days after she passed, I decided to do something fun for the first time and just get out of crying every morning and every night, because those were the 2 hardest time of days for me, because at night is when in the morning is when my brain had to make a reconnection again that she's no longer here, and that she's no longer here because of suicide. And then at night, my brain had to make the connection that I went through a whole nother day without her. So those were the two hardest times of the day for me. And so I was like, I was supposed to go to this baseball game. I decided I would go. And I went to this baseball game, started feeling social anxiety. I never felt that before, but I just started feeling overwhelmed. And I was like, this is a bad idea. Then it started pouring rain at the stadium. And I was like, you know what? Forget it. I am just gonna dance in this rain because these are basically my tears falling from the sky of all the crying that I've done in these past week. And after the storm cleared, there was this huge double rainbow that covered the stadium from one end to the other. And every time for that latter part of the year, I went out and tried to do something fun, there was a rainbow or a butterfly there to greet me. Wow. To remind me that life is still worth living. Yeah. Because she's still here. She's still cheering me on. She's still cheering my brother and my sister and our family and my dad on. And that, she's still fighting for us. And so I think one of the things I came, and I'll end this with a letter that I wrote to my mom during my grief work that I did through the 7 steps of grief. One thing that I'll share is that I'm really grateful for the love of God because it has held me tight in moments where I felt like I can't understand. I don't have the answers. I don't have the resources. I don't have my mom, It felt like every time I felt God's love towards me, the comfort of Jesus wrap around me, I felt my mom was there too. And it made me realize that if God is the origin, the source, the essence, that love is who he is, then my mom can be found in his love. That I can never break that connection. And then he went one step further, and there was such an outpouring of love and support and goodness and, oh my goodness, celebration from our communities around us. The bridesmaids who walked me down the aisle to marry my husband were the same bridesmaids who walked me down the aisle to see my mom in her casket. All 7 of them flew out to be there with me on the best day and the worst day of my life. And, my sister's entire troop was there at the funeral. My brother's entire community in Colorado was there helping to, pay for the funeral or to, serve in the funeral or in some way, shape, or form. And there was no need that was left unmet. The way in which me and my siblings have come together for such a terrible, tragic, and traumatic time, the way in which our family has come together. This didn't break us. It made us stronger. And I think that's just a legacy of her love because she was always the glue. And so her resurrection, I've come to know, has been in the way she has lived in all of us. In me being on this very podcast, taking on the legacy to fight for my voice, to fight, to take ownership of the spaces that I'm in, to be my own greatest cheerleader. And in the way in which it lives through my brothers and sisters, my dad, my family members, and the way in which it lives through my friends and their love and support for me, and the way they cheer me on. She has never died. She has just made a great migration. And yeah, so that is what I want to share. For all those who are listening, I don't even know if I can do a grounding exercise, but I'm going to read this letter. I might have to end it here. I thought Hannah would need to open this for me, but here I am. Here I am. I haven't read this since, so I don't know what's up in here. I really don't. But it's a letter to my mom that I made during my grief process. I said, "Dear Mom, I'm sure this will be the first letter of many or few, just definitely not the last. You know, I love to talk and tell stories, so this should come as no surprise to you. I'm not going to try to make I'm not going to try to make this sound perfect or even all comprehensive. I know grief changes and the waves come and go, and this letter can only really capture what I feel up to this present moment. It won't be able to capture what I feel for a lifetime, and that's okay. Mom, do you really remember the time where we sat down at a pho restaurant and had maybe our first uninterrupted, genuine one-on-one time? You didn't seem comfortable with big emotions, and you didn't really seem to know how to handle them. So it seemed like you would interject, go on tangents, or try to take the conversation into a more familiar territory. And I chose to let you do that. I chose to love you by meeting you where you are at, instead of demanding that you meet me where I wanted you to be. I know so many people have muted your voice and stripped you of your love and fight for life by doing that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted you to feel like this was your space too, and that this would be a relationship where you could be loved for who you are and not what you do or don't do. Well, you're physically dead now, and I have the full arena to speak to you uninterrupted. So you're just going to have to ask God to help you manage what big emotions come up. I will never fully understand or know the reasons why you decided to take your own life. What drove you there? What was the last straw on the camel's back? I'll never be able to wrap my head around how my beautiful and stunning mom would commit such violence against herself to rid the world of her beauty. I still remember going to Chuck E. Cheese and McDonald's and so many different men wanting to court you. I think the manager of Chuck E. Cheese slipped me your number once while we were leaving, not knowing I was your kid. Yes. Or that time that opening act from Omarion's show serenaded you at McDonald's. You were my beautiful, stunning, and gorgeous mother, but you are also so much more than your beauty. You loved intensely with all that you had. You fought fiercely as long as you could. And your capabilities and talents and work ethic brought you from a sales rep at the BX to the executive assistant of the consular office of Japan. You were the rock and glue of our family, dependable even when you didn't want to be, even if you didn't know how. I didn't always see that. Sometimes I thought you only did it because you had to, not because you loved me. I thought if given the chance, you'd choose not to be my mother, that you somehow regretted me, and that spurred hate in me towards you, fed by the somewhat narcissistic lies that I was hearing in my head. But I'm grateful that in my adulthood, I came to see you as my biggest cheerleader. Whether it was a Japanese snack care package or a subscription to Just Fab, I wasn't lying. You showed you wanted to be there for me 4,000 miles away. I missed a zero, okay. There are so many things, Mom, I wish could have been different for you, for us. But in truth, dysfunction and trauma ate away at a lot of our relationship before it really had time to take off. My last memories with you are the greatest, full and unadulterated time with you, where I felt like the blinds were being twisted open and the shutters were lifting. Your light was coming through, and I was being invited to sit in it. Couldn't have asked for a better trip to New Jersey. It was like God had put his chef's kiss on our time together, and I knew then he was wooing you, inviting you to see that there is still so much life to live after losing your beloved Akito. And I think that's what breaks my heart, is that wasn't enough to hold you. The claws of depression and grief had sunken so deep after you losing your mom and my Obacha that you were willing to leave the door open for your children to experience the same tragedy. I don't hate you for it, even though I don't completely understand it. I stand by the decision I made a while ago. I choose to love you for who you are, not because of anything you did or didn't do. Not because of that. Even if that means you could have been here longer and seen your first daughter become a mother. I still want this relationship to be characterized by the space it gives you to be who you need to be. This has been the hardest lesson on unconditional love. To take a page from our Heavenly Father and practice a love that is stronger than death. You will always be my mother, and I will never again be ashamed of that. I am who I am because of you. Every heartbeat that beats for someone to feel included, seen, and heard, to feel like they belong, is because of you. Every badge and every bridge I build and encouragement I give is because of you. And even the fight to live every moment to the fullest will be because of you. The legacy of your life and death will live inside me every day. Writing these words feel unreal as it hits home that this isn't a text or voicemail you can respond to. I will miss most the feeling of home whenever you were around. Our family will forever feel incomplete without you. And that's how it's supposed to be. You are irreplaceable. Your essence, your very being, who you are in just your presence. The world, my world, is darker and less safe without it. But there is something that leaves me with hope. It's the way you've been fighting for us, even still, from the other side. Being our biggest cheerleader and mother, whether it's a butterfly of companionship, a brilliant rainbow after the storm, or a box of tissues reminding us to call someone if we need help. It's still us chasing sunsets and beauty together, sharing it together. And I know you want me to just move on with my life and put this all behind me. But this is my choice. I choose to be affected by your life and your death. I choose to carry you with me to whatever chapters lie ahead. You will never not influence me or be with me. You will always be my mom, and I will always be here because of you. The hole in my heart is evident of that, and I choose to hold it with honor and not shame, for it is the imprint of your love and our very special relationship. I love you, Mom. Aishiteru, Okasan. So, oh Lord, you got everything. You got the tears, you got the sniffles, you got the ASMR. Wow. Yeah, so that's really all I wanted to share. My heart breaks for anyone who has experienced such a loss, whether that's suicide or other. But I hope this sharing encourages you that love is stronger than death, and that those you love, whether with you or not, are still there, resurrected through your memories, the way that you love others, and the way that you hold them close. My mom is still here. I know it. My siblings, I'm pretty sure they know it. My families know it. But I thank you so much for opening this space and, allowing me to share probably one of the most vulnerable shares I'll have in the seasons of love in dark places. But this is why I made this podcast, y'all. It's time for our depression to not be silent, for our anxiety to stop being the main voice, for us to feel like failure is stronger than love. I don't know what's going on over here. But this is why I wanted to do it, that even in the darkest of places, in the most tragic of losses, love is possible. And you are not alone. And there is still so much hope left to live for. So I love y'all, and I appreciate you. And you are needed, and the world is better with you here. And you are irreplaceable. See you on the next time of Love in Dark Places. Sorry. There will be no grounding exercise because we had to replace the battery. So if there was a cut, that was a cut. Still very unscripted and unedited. But I'll put a link. I'll put a link to a grounding exercise should you want it. But your girl, I gotta recover. But I love you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is Exhibit A, Love in Dark Places.